Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. Got some college football on Thursday now. We actually got 3 games. Sun Belt game and then 2 Conference USA matchups. Gonna go through all 3 in this video. Let's do it.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
We're starting out in the Sun Belt. We got Coastal Carolina on the road at James Madison here. JMU laying 9.5. It looks like the 10s are... Oh, no, I still do see a juice 10 out there. For the most part, all the books have this one down at 9.5 now. Total sitting at 60.5. I do see a 61, depending on your sports book. Let's take a quick look at the pie charts, and according to this data, action's coming in pretty heavy on the James Madison side. 65% of the tickets and about 65% of the money. But as I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with some head-to-head history. James Madison has beaten the life out of Coastal Carolina back-to-back years. 56-14 last year, 47-7 the year before that. So a couple of one-sided games there in James Madison's favor. So what do we think about the Coastal Carolina offense this year? Well, it's looking a little different without Grayson McCall, right? They're running the ball a lot. 18th in run frequency so far this season. Although we have seen Vasco throw the ball recently in the last couple of games. We'll talk about it in a second. Here are the numbers on the year. You can see they're actually 6th in the country in yards per pass attempt, 70th in success rate per dropback, 49th in effective pass. Rushing numbers look okay. I mean, nothing really jumps out here. They're sitting 44th in OFEI. Vasco's numbers on the season, 1093, 10 yards per pass attempt, which explains how they're 6th in the country. So when he drops back the throw, we've seen some big plays. 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Solid-looking numbers there from Vasco. And if we isolated just the last 2 games specifically, 334.5 passing yards per game, 11.65 yards per attempt. Now, 39.9% success rate per dropback doesn't look great, but we are seeing Vasco rack up some passing yards. He's passing a bit more than he was in the previous 2 games. On top of that, he actually played in this game last year, and he played pretty well. 21 of 29, 254 yards, a touchdown, a 157.4 passer rating. So he was actually able to throw the ball in James Madison's defense last year, which, as we know, was a lot better. It was loaded. That was before Signetti left and took a bunch of the defensive pieces. Well, he took a bunch of the offensive pieces with him as well. But yeah, so Vasco was able to throw the ball in James Madison last year. And as far as James Madison's pass defense goes, I don't know if it's any good. I mean, we saw North Carolina destroy this pass defense, but I mean, they still won that game by 20 points. It was 70-50. But Criswell was going off on James Madison's defense. 475 yards passing, 52.1% success rate per dropback, 9.9 yards per attempt. And I mean, have you watched Criswell play for North Carolina? He's not exactly killing it throwing the ball. So he put up record-breaking numbers against this James Madison pass defense. And if you look at their other 4 games, the pass defense numbers look great. I mean, yards per attempt under 5, 32.2% success rate per dropback. They have great pass defense numbers in their other 4, but against who? Charlotte, Gardner-Webb, Ball State, Louisiana Monroe. Louisiana Monroe is actually surprisingly pretty good, but I mean, this is not the strongest competition. The best team they played so far this season by far was North Carolina, and they won that game. It was awesome for James Madison, but the pass defense sure as shit didn't look good. And like I said, Criswell hasn't even looked good throwing the ball this year, so I'm not sure if this James Madison pass defense is good. If you look at the numbers, it looks pretty good. 18th in yards per attempt, 39th in success rate per dropback, 40th in effective pass. Looks solid. They're sitting at 31st in DFEI. Run defense numbers looks pretty good. They're back at 62nd, though, in effective rush. But again, when we're looking at numbers like this for James Madison's defense, we do have to consider the strength of schedule. I don't think the pass rush is going to be there for James Madison. They're 65th in sack rate, 92nd in pressure rate. Meanwhile, Coastal Carolina, this offensive line brought back 3 starters from last year, and they've been excellent in pass protection. They're 10th in pressure rate allowed, 23rd in pass blocking grade. So I don't know if the James Madison pass rush is going to be able to get the Vasco in this one. And honestly, Vasco with a clean pocket has been great. Look at these splits here. I mean, he's actually handled pressure well also, but given a clean pocket, Vasco can make some plays. And like I said earlier, they've been dropping him back to pass a little more the last 2 games. Now, what about Coastal's run game? Because if you watch the beginning of the season for Coastal, they ran the ball all over Jacksonville State. After 2 games, they were averaging over 286 rushing yards per game, 5.56 yards per carry, 55% success rate on the ground. But here's the thing, since then, it hasn't been great. They're averaging under 4 yards per carry as a team in their last 3, just a 31.6% success rate, and that's against Temple. Virginia, okay. Virginia's tough competition for Coastal. Also, Old Dominion has a surprisingly good defensive front, but still, to average less than 4 yards per carry, I had a lot of faith in this Coastal rushing attack. That's why I bet them against Jacksonville State in the opener. I'm not sure if I believe in it much anymore, and especially in this matchup against James Madison. Yes, the James Madison front seven from last year that was absolutely lights out against the run, that's gone. Signetti's gone. He took a couple of the pieces with him. It's not there anymore. But this is still looking like a really good run defense here in James Madison. On the season, allowing just 3.55 yards per carry, success rate under 35%. So I don't know if we can count on the run game being there for Coastal Carolina. But overall, I do expect Vasco to be able to make plays through the air on this James Madison secondary. He played well against James Madison last year. So I like the matchup for Vasco. Now, what about the other side? What about James Madison's offense? They've been pretty balanced so far. 42nd in pace, 72nd in run frequency. Kind of a tough unit to get a feel for based on what we've seen in the last few weeks. So last week, they really struggled against Louisiana Monroe. Just 19 points in the game, under 5 yards per play, 42% success rate. Not a good offensive performance against Louisiana Monroe. But the 2 games before that, they were averaging 66.5 points per game. Success rate over 50%, over 8.3 yards per play. So what do we really make of that? They could score 70 points on North Carolina, but can't score on Louisiana Monroe. Definitely puts us in a tough position in terms of making a prediction in this one, I think. I mean, those are pretty extreme ends of the spectrum there. If we look at their offensive numbers on the season, 15th in yards per play. Rushing numbers look pretty good. 16th in yards per carry, 34th in success rate, 28th in effective rush. Passing numbers not quite as impressive, but if you look at Barnett's numbers on the year, I mean, it looks excellent. 1,273 yards, 8.5 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns, 1 pick, a 154.7 passer rating. The problem is, where was that against Louisiana Monroe? Just 251 passing yards in the game, 5.3 yards per attempt, 32% success rate per dropback. They couldn't throw the ball in Louisiana Monroe. 2 games before that against Ball State and North Carolina, I mean, they couldn't miss. 10.65 yards per attempt, 337 yards a game, 52% success rate per dropback. So was that game against Louisiana Monroe just the ultimate flat spot? Really not sure what happened there. Really not sure what we're supposed to do with that data point. And by the way, this Coastal Carolina defense has actually done a really solid job against the pass so far this year. I know if you pull up numbers from the opener against Jacksonville State, it looks like they were able to throw the ball on Coastal, but this is a little misleading. Logan Smothers started that game, couldn't do anything. They made a quarterback change over to Huff. At that point, Coastal Carolina was already up like 4 touchdowns. And yeah, Huff came in and was able to make some throws and score some points in garbage time, but that's not an accurate reflection of how that game went down. And if you look at the 4 games since then, pass defense numbers look great. 191.3 passing yards allowed per game, 6.55 yards per attempt, 35.5% success rate per dropback. And you may look and say, William & Mary, Temple, Old Dominion, who cares? But Virginia's in there. Virginia, that's an ACC passing attack with Calandria. They can throw the ball. How'd they look against them? They held Virginia to just 141 yards passing, 6.1 yards per attempt, 36% success rate per dropback. Granted, Virginia was running the ball all over them and beat them by, I think, like 17, something like that. So they beat them comfortably, and they didn't really need to throw the ball. But just a 36% success rate indicates that when they tried to throw the ball, they weren't really able to do so. So I think this Coastal Carolina pass defense might be pretty good. They are 56th in the country in yards per pass attempt, 38th in success rate, just 111th in effective pass, because other than Virginia, they really haven't seen the toughest of competition. And unfortunately for Coastal, pass rush probably not going to be there much in this one. They're 55th in pressure rate, 45th in sack rate on the year, but James Madison's offensive line is looking pretty strong. They brought back 3 starters from last year's team, 16th in the country in pressure rate allowed. So I doubt Coastal is able to generate consistent pressure in this game. But overall, I like the matchup for Coastal's pass defense. I think they're going to give Barnett some problems throwing the ball. The problem for Coastal is right here. Can they stop James Madison's rushing attack? In their last 3 games, they're averaging over 5.6 yards per carry, over 52% rushing success rate, 200 rushing yards per game. And the Coastal Carolina run defense, it looked good in the first 3 games. allowing just 3.72 yards per carry, 131.3 yards per game. That was against Jacksonville State, William & Mary, and Temple. But then in their last 2 games against Virginia and Old Dominion, I mean, they couldn't stop anybody on the ground. 54% success rate, 6.15 yards per carry. So I really doubt they're able to stop James Madison from running the ball here. But the question is that enough to lay 9.5 points? Because like I said, I do expect Vasco to be able to make plays here on the James Madison secondary. I don't think it is. I think I would lean towards Coastal here. If you don't believe in Coastal Carolina's defense enough, maybe look towards the over, because let's say James Madison's going to have a lead in this game. Vasco should be able to make plays on the James Madison secondary, like I said, to keep the total driving up. So I would say Coastal Carolina plus 9.5 or over 60.5. You know what? What's Coastal Carolina's team total over? All right, new pick. Coastal Carolina team total over 24.5 or Coastal Carolina plus 9.5. These won't be big bets. I don't feel very strongly about this game. So those are my picks. Next game. We're back into Conference USA. Next, we got Middle Tennessee on the road at La Tech. Louisiana Tech laying 4.5 points at home. Total sitting at 49.5 pretty much across the board here. Let's take a quick look at the pie charts, and according to this data, action's coming in heavy on the Bulldog side. Over 65% of the tickets on Louisiana Tech, about 90% of the money. So action seems to be coming in on the La Tech side, but as I always say, take this data with a grain of salt. So let's start by looking at the Middle Tennessee offense, and we know what this offense is. We know what the Blue Raiders do. Same thing they did last year. Vadiato throws the ball. This is an offense that likes to throw the ball. They're 17th in passing frequency again this year, just like last year. Numbers don't look great. If you look at their schedule so far, you might understand why. They've played some teams, man. Middle Tennessee's been through the gauntlet. Still 33rd in the country, though, in yards per pass attempt, 94th in success rate per dropback, 69th in effective pass. Yes, I'm aware that the rushing numbers look terrible. That is not weird for Middle Tennessee. They did not have a rushing attack last year. They're probably not going to have a rushing attack this year. This is their offense right here. His name is Nicholas Vadiato, quarterback, 1,275 yards, 7.8 yards per attempt, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Numbers not looking too great as of right now. But if you take into consideration he's played at Ole Miss, Western Kentucky, who's one of the best teams in the conference, Duke, that's a tough defense, especially for a Conference USA program, and on the road at Memphis. So like I said, Middle Tennessee, yeah, their offensive numbers look pretty terrible. There's a reason for that. They've played some really tough defenses. And you know what? There were a couple games where we saw the passing attack working. Those games were not at Ole Miss or Duke. In those 2 games, they averaged less than 5 yards per pass attempt, 33.3% success rate per dropback. But in the Western Kentucky and Memphis games, 2 defenses that aren't quite on Ole Miss and Duke's level, almost 370 passing yards a game, 11.9 yards per attempt. Success rate per dropback almost at 50%. So in the Western Kentucky and Memphis games, Middle Tennessee's passing attack was working. So how do they match up against La Tech? Well, on the season, Louisiana Tech has some excellent looking defensive numbers this year. Here are their numbers against the pass. They're allowing just 6.2 yards per attempt on the season. Just a 34.1% success rate per dropback. They have elite defensive numbers, and not just against the pass. Check this out. They're 24th in the country in yards per play allowed, 3rd in total success rate allowed, 20th in PPA. Run defense numbers look great as far as raw data goes. Pass defense numbers look great as far as raw data goes. Look at the schedule adjusted metrics. 111th in effective rush, 113th in effective pass, 113th in DFEI. Now you might look at their schedule and say, how is that possible? I mean, they played Tulsa, they played NC State. It's not like they played nobody. Well, Tulsa's pretty terrible and doesn't have any sort of offense this year. And NC State, that was the game where Grayson McCall got hurt. CJ Bailey took over. That was his first action in college football. So they got a first-time quarterback in that game. And by the way, NC State still put up 30 on them. It's not like they blanked them. I mean, other than that, they played Nichols, FIU. They actually did a decent defensive job against FIU. Still lost by a touchdown. So, look, these raw numbers look excellent. 24th in the country in yards per play. We know this team. This is a bad defense last year. They lost a lot of their production. They do have a new defensive coordinator, so I suppose there is a chance that maybe this defense just went through this big transformation, but I think more likely than not, it's the schedule, and we're going to see this defense start to look like the Sonny Cumbie defense we saw last year. We can pull up their numbers against the run on the season. They're allowing just 3 yards per carry, 30.2% success rate. But honestly, it doesn't matter because Middle Tennessee just isn't really trying to run the ball. All they do is throw it. Here are Middle Tennessee's rushing numbers. I mean, non-existent. 80.2 rushing yards per game. Like I said, this is an offense that wants to throw the ball, and Nicholas Vadiato had no problems throwing the ball in this Louisiana Tech defense last year. 23 of 29, 248, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. interceptions, passer rating up at 174. So he threw the ball all over La Tech last year. And honestly, I know they have some great looking numbers. Maybe this new defensive coordinator, I don't know who he is. Maybe he's just a genius and I'm going to be caught off guard. Personally, I think Vadiato's going to piece him up. On the other side, we got the Louisiana Tech offense, and just like Middle Tennessee, they're trying to throw the ball. 25th in pass frequency on the season, and their numbers offensively, not even close to what their defensive numbers look like. They are 84th in the country in yards per pass attempt, just 128th in success rate per dropback, 97th in effective pass. Their rushing numbers pretty much just as bad as Middle Tennessee. Not going to be a lot of running in this game. Two teams that just cannot run the ball. As far as quarterback goes, we really don't know what we're going to get here. The kid Baker, that's the kid who's supposed to be starting. He broke his collarbone. We've only seen Louisiana Tech play one game without him. In that game, they were held to just 10 points by Florida International. We've seen that FIU defense. We watched them against Liberty. It's not a particularly great defense. They held Louisiana Tech to just 10 points, 32.8% success rate, 4.5 yards per play. So the first game we saw them without Baker, the offense wasn't able to do much. That being said, Jack Turner did play last year a little bit when Hank Bachmeier was hurt. So, I mean, he didn't look great, but he is capable of moving the ball. So I wouldn't say this offense is completely dead in the water. And when you pull up Middle Tennessee's defensive numbers, you start to regain some hope in the La Tech offense because the Blue Raiders, they don't really play defense. I mean, they're 124th in DFEI. Look at their pass defense numbers. 131st in yards per pass attempt, 129th in success rate per dropback, 124th in effective pass. Yeah, maybe the raw numbers can be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt based on who they've played a very difficult schedule. And you know what? They did show up against Memphis. They held Memphis to just 5.5 yards per pass attempt, 34.1% success rate per dropback. That's Hennigan. We know they can throw the ball. That's an excellent defensive showing right there. But look at their defensive numbers against the pass in their other three games. I mean, Ole Miss, we're not even going to talk about Ole Miss because obviously they did whatever they wanted on Middle Tennessee. But Duke, Western Kentucky, I mean, two more talented quarterbacks, over 12 yards per pass attempt, 62.5% success rate, over 364 passing yards allowed per game. So we do have to give the Blue Raiders defense some credit. In their last game, they went on the road to Memphis, held Seth Hennigan and the Memphis offense to just 24 points, played some solid defense. Now, was that a flat spot for Memphis, or was that Middle Tennessee turning the page defensively? Maybe this is going to be an improved defense moving forward. They also have a new defensive coordinator, so maybe things are starting to click for them. Really not sure. Unfortunately, they haven't shown us much of a pass rush this year. 128th in pressure rate, 132nd in pass rush grade. Louisiana Tech, surprisingly, has done a good job in pass protection. They're actually 19th in pressure rate allowed. So, I mean, if you look at the numbers, take into consideration that Jack Turner saw the field last year. He started a few games. This Middle Tennessee defense has looked terrible against the pass for most of the year. They looked great in their last game. I mean, tough to make a prediction. Personally, I think Turner's going to be able to throw the ball in this one. I don't have a lot of faith in this Middle Tennessee defense. And in terms of the La Tech rushing attack, I mean, same thing as the Middle Tennessee rushing attack. I mean, we don't even have to talk about it. The numbers are terrible. They're averaging less than 80 rushing yards per game, 2.45 yards per carry. So just like Middle Tennessee, this team has been unable to run it. This team wants to throw the ball. So, I mean, we got two offenses looking to throw the ball. Vadiato, I know, is capable of putting up points. I personally think Jack Turner against this Middle Tennessee defense that doesn't have a pass rush is also able to put up some points. Points to an over here, over 49. I also like Middle Tennessee to cover and possibly win. I might actually put some money on this. I mean, these midweek Conference USA games are really challenging, tough to make predictions. I personally think Middle Tennessee can win this game, at the very least put up a big number on the scoreboard. So why don't we look at the Middle Tennessee team total over, 1 second. Middle Tennessee team total over 22.5. I like that. You know what? Yeah. Give me Middle Tennessee team total over 22.5, and also give me the Middle Tennessee plus 4.5. That's what I'll roll with in this one, and I'll put a few dollars. It won't be a big bet. Please bet responsibly, but I'm going to back the Blue Raiders here. Next game. Staying in Conference USA, we got UTEP. It's minor time. On the road at Western Kentucky. Hilltoppers laying 19.5 at home in this one. Total sitting pretty much at 57. I do see a couple 57. I actually see a couple 56.5s as well. So bouncing in between 56.5 and 57.5. Let's take a look at the pie charts. According to the data, Action's coming in pretty split in terms of ticket percentage, just over 50% on Western Kentucky. Money seems to be coming in pretty heavily on the Western Kentucky side, though. Over 75% of the money coming in on Western Kentucky, according to this data. As I always say, please take this data with a grain of salt. So let's start with some head-to-head history. Western Kentucky has taken 4 in a row, so they're 4-0 in their last 4 matchups against UTEP. UTEP has been covering, though. 3-1 against the number, those Miners, on their last 3. Last year, the score was 21-13 in this game. But we don't care about last year. We want to talk about this year. Start with the Miner offense. Obviously, as we know, this is an offense that wants to throw the ball. They're sitting at 17th in passing frequency so far this year. Haven't done a great job at it. Just 107th in yards per pass attempt, 116th in success rate per dropback, 102nd in effective pass. Their passing numbers against FBS teams, not great. Just 34% success rate per dropback, 218.3 yards per game, 6.18 yards per attempt. But here's the thing. The GOAT, Cade McConnell, wasn't in for most of these games. He just got the starting job back last game. Now, they did get their asses beat last game, but in the second half of that game, McConnell seemed to have found something because actually the back door was open there for a second with UTEP plus 10. I know that's crazy, but he was getting up and down the field at the end of the game. Yes, it was in garbage time, but it was his first start of the year. It was his first start since last season, so I don't think it's crazy that this offense can work to some extent on a Conference USA level. Cade McConnell just thrown in there. Maybe he just needed a few drives to get it going. Keep in mind, we saw UTEP's offense score points with Cade McConnell at quarterback last year, so it's not crazy to think that this offense can be somewhat formidable. Again, I'm speaking on a Conference USA level. I'm not talking about top 50 in the country. I'm just saying by Conference USA standards, I think UTEP is capable of having a decent passing attack with Cade McConnell at quarterback. So how do they match up against Western Kentucky's pass defense? Well, we saw Western Kentucky get cooked up by Alabama. Shocker. But also Middle Tennessee, Vadiato really went off on Western Kentucky. In those 2 games, they allowed 361 passing yards per game, over 64% success rate per dropback is wild, 14.75 yards per attempt. But the thing is, if you look at their last 2 games, they did a much better job against the pass, allowing just 5.7 yards per attempt, 184 passing yards per game. And you might look at this graphic and think, oh shit, Toledo and Boston College, they were playing good defense against some solid programs. Well, Castellanos didn't play in the Boston College game, so that's number 1, and we've seen how different that Boston College is without him. And number 2, Toledo is a shell of what it was last year. Daquan Finn is no longer there. I know that they've actually played pretty well, Toledo, but that's nowhere near the Toledo team that we saw last year. Not that I'm trying to take credit away from Western Kentucky's defense. In fact, I really appreciated that Toledo game. Western Kentucky was one of my top bets that Saturday. That game came down to the wire, and they really did play well defensively, but it's important to take note. Toledo and Boston College, I mean, Boston College without Castellanos, Toledo, pretty much a gutted Toledo team in comparison to last year's Toledo team. If you look at the Western Kentucky pass defense numbers on the year, they don't look great. 129th in the country in yards per pass attempt allowed. Yes, a lot of that is skewed from the Alabama game, but also Middle Tennessee cooked on them as well. 119th in success rate per dropback, 105th in effective pass. They do have a little bit of a pass rush. The 21st in pressure rate, 67th in sack rate. But the thing is, this UTEP offense doesn't have many redeeming qualities. They're actually not bad in pass protection. 65th in pressure rate allowed, 83rd in sack rate allowed, 53rd in pass blocking grade. So this UTEP offensive line, look, I'm not trying to say it's good. They're actually terrible in terms of creating space in the run game, but in terms of keeping the quarterback safe, they're actually not bad. I think they're going to be able to keep Western Kentucky's pass rush in check to an extent. Now, in terms of running the ball, I already mentioned UTEP doesn't have a rushing attack. They don't even really try to run it. They're averaging just 2.94 yards per carry on the season, 87.6 rushing yards per game, success rate down at 39.1%. The run game really isn't on the radar for UTEP. Now, Western Kentucky's run defense, we've seen them get cooked a couple times, including the Eastern Kentucky game, which is wild. In the Alabama and Eastern Kentucky games, they allowed over 6 yards per carry, over 50% success rate. But the thing is, in their other 3 games, allowed just 3.06 yards per carry. And I mean, Boston College, Toledo, Middle Tennessee, not exactly the gauntlet, but still, these are impressive defensive numbers against the run, and UTEP can't run the ball, so run game shouldn't be there for UTEP. The question's going to be, is McConnell able to continue what he started in the second half of that Sam Houston State game? He was able to get the ball up and down the field a couple times. Was that him figuring it out, or was that him making plays in garbage time of the Sam Houston State game? We'll have to wait and see. Now, what about the other side of the ball? What about the Western Kentucky offense? And we already know what this Western Kentucky offense is. It's the same thing every year under Tyson Helton. They move fast, they throw the ball a lot. 33rd in passing frequency so far this year, and they've done a pretty good job at it. They're actually sitting at 25th in effective pass. So Sharp College Football has Western Kentucky rated as a top 25 passing attack, which isn't weird. They were up there with Austin Reed. They were up there with Bailey Zappi years ago. I mean, under Tyson Helton, this passing attack is always good. It's always pretty much the best in Conference USA, and that includes Liberty. Liberty runs the ball. They're 65th in the country in yards per pass attempt, 59th in success rate, sitting at 74th in OFEI, and we've seen a night and day difference since Velkamp has taken over. As you probably already know, they started the season with Finley at quarterback, and we were talking about that on the show. We didn't really understand that from the jump. Not that I don't think Finley is good. In fact, I've said a number of times, I don't think he really got a fair shake at Auburn, but he just doesn't fit what Tyson Helton is usually doing. Just an air raid, run and gun, pass heavy offense. Finley's more of an athlete. Velkamp fits exactly what they're trying to do here at Western Kentucky. And ever since they made Velkamp the starting quarterback, we're starting to see Western Kentucky look like the Western Kentucky we're used to. So far this season, he's got 883 yards, 8.1 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, a 151.6 passer rating. So he's been very efficient throwing the ball. You can see a night and day difference here. Here are the Western Kentucky passing numbers in the Finley games. Just 227 passing yards per game, 5.8 yards per attempt, 32.7% success rate per dropback. Granted, one of those games was against Alabama, but the other one was against Eastern Kentucky, which is inexcusable. Meanwhile, in the 3 games since Velkamp has taken over 318 yards per game, 9 yards per attempt, 51.3% success rate per dropback. This is what Western Kentucky's passing attack normally looks like. So I like this offense a lot more with Velkamp in there, which is why I made Western Kentucky my top bet in that Toledo game, because I really like that offense. So the question becomes, how does this Western Kentucky offense with Velkamp match up against the UTEP pass defense? Well, the Miners got lit up through the air against Liberty. 12 yards per attempt, 52.4% success rate per dropback. I mean, only 228 yards, but it's Liberty. They run the ball mostly, so when they did throw it, they had no problem doing so. That being said, in their other 4 games, look, take it or leave it, numbers don't lie. They actually played solid defense against the pass. 39.1% success rate per dropback, 6.88 yards per pass attempt allowed, under 189 passing yards allowed per game. And look, I mean, Colorado State's in there. We know Fowler Nicolosi can play, even though he's definitely not having a great year. Sam Houston State, yeah, they mostly run the ball, but Nebraska's in there. These numbers include the Nebraska game. This UTEP pass defense might not be that bad. I'll say it. The Miners' pass defense might not be that bad. And when you pull up their numbers on the season, look at the bottom of this graphic. 87th in yards per pass attempt allowed, 95th in success rate, 97th in effective pass. Keep in mind, this is a Conference USA game we're talking about. 97th in effective pass is solid for a Conference USA game. This pass defense might be okay. Last year, the strength of this UTEP defense was the pass rush, and from what I read, they're expecting it to be the strength again this year, and Western Kentucky has struggled a bit in pass protection. 81st in pressure allowed, 86th in sack rate. Look at the UTEP pass. I mean, 130th in pressure rate is pretty bad. 21st in sack rate, so when they're getting there, they're getting them to the ground. Look, it's thin. It's thin, but I think this UTEP pass defense might not be half bad. The weakness of this UTEP defense is defending the run. I mean, if you watched the Sam Houston State game last week, you know that. They ran the ball all over UTEP. Here's the thing. Western Kentucky doesn't run the ball, and when they do, they're not very good at it. They're averaging just 3.22 yards per carry as a team this year. 100 rushing yards per game. So yeah, when we pull up the UTEP run defense numbers, they look pretty bad, but I'm not sure how much of a factor this is because Western Kentucky doesn't really run the ball. So as crazy as it sounds, I like the matchup for UTEP, and I know everyone's hating the words that are coming out of my mouth. I did take a loss with UTEP plus 10 last week, and I know everyone's looking at this game and they're like, no way, we're not doing it. We're not telling you if you're taking UTEP. I can't help it. I like UTEP. I think they're able to play them tough. I think McConnell can make plays on this Western Kentucky defense that I don't think is very good. 19.5 is too many. Tail at your own risk. Please bet responsibly. I'm taking the Miners, man. Give me UTEP plus 19.5. Oh, man. This is going to be a rough one. I'm taking UTEP plus 19.5. I'm going to put a few dollars on this. Let's go Miners. If you want to see all the bets I have open, head over to kylekirms.com and click on open bets. You'll see all mine as well as everyone on the staff here. Also, if you sign up to Sauce Network Plus, it comes with access to the Discord, and you can participate in the weekly betting league. $150 cash and one of these trophies go to the winner every single week. So if you're interested, head over to the website and sign up. Let's have ourselves a nice college football week 7. I need one, man. College football's been terrible for me so far. Need that to turn around. Please remember to bet responsibly. Talk to you in the Discord.